Okay guys, so this is gonna be a quick tutorial video on how to add ActionScript to your project. Unfortunately, because I didn't realize that I was going to be at jury duty, I didn't plan and didn't have, and I should have, but I didn't bring my project home, so this is going to be kind of a generic tutorial, and you need to apply these concepts to your own project, and then we will troubleshoot them on Tuesday morning. Hopefully, though, you can get it all working by then. So here's my Flash program, and basically what I have is I have all my layers, and they're named, and they have all the content on them. So this is page 1, and let's say this is page 2, and I'm going to show you a couple different types of ActionScript and navigation. So as I demonstrated for you last week, you can create buttons that will jump you to another place in your timeline. They can jump a user to an outside website like Google. So let's say you're doing the advertisement for the Denver Art Museum. At the end of that advertisement, you need a stop action so that the movie stops looping, which if I preview this one, that's the loop, and so that doesn't look very good. We need it to stop looping, and then maybe we have a button at the very end of it that goes to the Denver Art Museum. So it really depends on what your project is. If it's a e-card, it might have it replay, so when somebody clicks on it, it jumps back to frame 1 and plays the whole animation again. There's many different things that you could do, and it really depends on your project. So think about where you need actions and what you want buttons to do, and build accordingly. So looking through here, you can see I've already kind of set up my workspace how I want it to be. I put my actions over here, and you could go to Window and choose Actions to bring that up. And then when you have it up, there's this little, if I click that, there's this little area right here, and I just click this little button to collapse that because I don't need it. And if you want to, you can click this Script Assist button, and that'll help you write script. But let's go ahead and start with our action script. So I always create a layer, and it should be on the top, called Actions, and this is where I'm going to put all of my action script. And I want it to stop on page 1, and I want it to stop on page 2 so that it doesn't go anywhere. So I'm going to go ahead and click on frame 1 of the actions layer, go to the plus sign and choose global functions, timeline control, and stop. And so that's going to stop it on frame 1. And you can see I'm selected on frame 1 by it shows a frame icon, the actions layer, and that's the name I gave it, actions, and frame 1. And if I move off, now you can see this little A here that tells us there's action script on that layer. So I'm going to go ahead and lock those just to make sure I don't add it. You shouldn't see it on any other layer. So I also want it to stop on frame 30 so that when my button jumps us to page 2, it'll stop on this page as well. The problem is when I click on this frame, it already shows a stop action. Well, that's still the action from frame 1 because that was the keyframe, as you can see by the little dot. So we need to create a keyframe here and add actions to this keyframe. So we'll go to Insert, Timeline, Blank Keyframe. And then from there, Global Functions, Timeline Control, Stop. Now when we play this, it's going to stop on page 1. The problem is it's never going to go to page 2 because we have no way of getting to page 2. So we need to go ahead and make a button. So on my navigation layer, I'll lock everything else except this layer. I'm going to go ahead and create a button. There are 2 things that make up a button. First, a button is made up with a shape. So let's go ahead and do shape. And it's also made up of text. So I'm going to go ahead and change this to white and make it smaller. And click. And this is going to say page 2. And I'll actually put jump to, page 2. So that obviously needs to be much smaller. Alright, so a button is made up of text and a shape, and then we need to make this a button. So the problem is that this button lasts for the entire timeline right now, so I'm going to go ahead and shift click all of these frames, right click and choose remove, and so it's just on frame 1. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight the 2 elements that make up the button, go to modify, convert to symbol, change this to button, and I'm going to call this BTN, and that's just what I like to call buttons in Flash, and I'll call this page 2. So that's going to jump us to page 2. So if I'm in the library, now you can see that I have a button and it shows this little icon. This is what I named it, and this is what it looks like. So here it is on the stage. Now what I want to do with that button is I want to create some hit states, rollover states, so that when a mouse is over it, if you see here, something happens other than just the hand. So I'll double click on the stage inside that button, and you'll see up, over, down, and hit state. So I'm going to just change the color of the shape for each one of these. You could change the font style. You could even change the shape behind it. But for right now, I'm going to hit F6 on the over state, and it's going to copy the keyframe before it. And I just want to go ahead and change that color. And F6 on the down state, and I'm going to go ahead and change that color. And then the hit state is just the active clickable area. So I just need a shape. And I'm going to turn this yellow so that you can see that you never see it. So now if I go ahead and preview this movie, now when I hover over it, it turns purple. And when I click and hold the mouse button, it turns green. But at no point does it turn yellow because the hit state is just what is the clickable area. So there it has rollover functionality, but it doesn't actually work. We need to put action scripts on this button, or action script, sorry, on this button. So by selecting the button, you can see in the action script panel the button symbol icon and the button symbol name that I gave it. So I'm going to apply to that button a new action script by going to +, global functions, timeline control, go to, because I want it to go to a different place on my timeline. So from there, it's going to say on release. So when the mouse button releases from this button, it's going to go to and play frame 1. Well, we don't want it to jump back on frame 1 because we already are on frame 1. We want it to jump to frame 30, which is where our page 2 is. Oops. So I'm going to go ahead and type 30 up here, and it's going to automatically change it in the script here. So now when I preview, when I click this button, it jumps us to page 2. So let's say on page 2 we want to have it go to Google. Well, we can go ahead and make another button, but I kind of like this button because it already has all the hit state, or the different colors for the states and all that good stuff. So what I'm actually going to do is right click on it here, hit duplicate, and this one I'm going to say button Google. And it's going to look the exact same because the text on it is the same, and that layer is locked. So I'm going to go ahead, oops, and that is the layer I want it to be on. So I want to add the button here. So I'll go ahead and hit insert timeline blank keyframe, and so then I want it to be here. So we'll put that on there, double click inside, and then for this text I'm going to say Google. So what I can do for this is, instead of changing on each of those states, I can cut it, create a new layer, and then hit edit, paste in place. And so then it's on all of the states except for on these ones. If I hide that, I need to get rid of this text so it doesn't get confusing. So I hope this is not too confusing. I'm just trying to hurry through this, but you can always pause it. And there we have Google, Google, Google. So go back to scene 1. And for this button, we don't want it to jump to anywhere else on our timeline. We actually want it to go somewhere. So global functions, browser network, get URL. So if I open this a little bit more, it's going to say what is the URL. So make sure it's the full URL. So sometimes I just go and copy it from the browser window. And then if you do _blank, that's going to open it up into its own new window. So then now this button, when I preview this video and I click jump to page and then click Google, there we go. So then it's bringing up that URL. So that's basically ActionScript. It's adding stop actions directly to the timeline in each place that you want it to stop, and then adding actions to the buttons after you've created a button that includes the text and the shape and the various hit, down, over, whatnot states, and then adding actions there so that it jumps to a different part of the timeline, so that it plays an animation, so that it opens up a URL, etc. So go ahead and finish your flash animation and try to do these action script. You're going to need to add a stop action somewhere for sure, and then you're probably going to need one button somewhere to do something, and you're going to have to figure out, do you want it to replay your animation? Do you want it to play your animation from the beginning? Maybe at the beginning you have a button that says start animation or something, or maybe it's going to take you to the Denver Art Museum. So go ahead and try that. Tuesday morning we'll troubleshoot it if you have any errors.